Welcome back to another segment of Ignite. We are so glad that you have joined us and hope that you have found the first segments to be valuable as you grow your marriage. Once again, we welcome back Dr. Carol Bruess, as well as our three couples, Matt and Caitlin Gabriel, John and Sandy Murphy, and Dave and Bonnie Hopp. Enjoy.
Hello, couples. Welcome back to segment 2. Okay, so in segment 1, we talked about the AAA of marriage, right? What you practice becomes stronger. And if you don't know what the AAA of marriage is, head back and watch segment 1. We talked about why you need to infuse your marriage with so much positivity. I shared a ratio that you need to make sure you hit in terms of positive to negative moments, and how you can create that ripple with some of that positivity, with that AAA that turns into a tsunami of goodness in your marriage. And so in this segment, what I want to do is build on those ideas and address in detail one of the things that holds most couples back. It's sneaky and powerful little things, so sneaky that so often we forget it's with us and in us 24/7, and we've had it since conception. It's our minds. That sneaky thing about our mind, the sneaky thing about our mind, especially in marriage, is that how we direct our minds has the power to ruin our marriages or propel our marriages to greatness. And part of this truth is learning that you have the power, the ability to change your own narrative. Not changing what your partner's thinking, changing what you are thinking. It's so powerful. For instance, I have a lot of therapist friends and former students who become marriage and family therapists. I am not a therapist. I'm an educator and a social scientist. Therapy is not one of my gifts. Most of my therapist friends will tell you that almost every couple that comes into therapy does so with each spouse bringing a laundry list, a long list of things wrong about their spouse. Not a long list of things they want themselves to do differently, but all the ways that their spouse can and must change. A narrative, right? And it doesn't mean that all of our spouses are perfect and they, right? But what this reveals is that one of the single greatest and most stubborn myths that people hold on to, often without even knowing that they're doing it. A lot of couples not even willing to admit they're doing this. The myth that if only I could get my spouse to fill in the blank, our marriage would be so much better. So what's the fill in the blank for you, right? Stop complaining about. Start being more intimate, affectionate. If only he would quit being so critical, negative. If only she would begin doing more XYZ, housework, chores, being loving, affectionate. If only he would stop, right? People, friends, couples, repeat after me. I can only change me. I cannot change my spouse. Okay, repeat after me. I can only change me. I cannot change my spouse. But that's great news, because you don't even need your partner to participate in changing, and your marriage can and will change. Human reciprocity, it's in our nature. We are systems. When one thing changes, it sends ripples throughout the system. Our marriage is a system, and that is a power that you want to harness. Think about the little mobile, right, that hangs over a baby's crib. Our marriages and our families actually are a lot like those mobiles. One little change sends a ripple throughout the entire system. Bump a mobile, just one tiny little bump, and all the parts move and change and adjust. You've heard this saying before, and often it's taught to teachers. It's really the core of the notion of self-fulfilling prophecy. The way you see a child is the way you treat them, and the way you treat them is what they will become. Well, the same is true for your marriage. And to change the way you see your marriage, you've got to change your internal narrative. As I mentioned in segment 1, the AAA of marriage is to affirm, appreciate, and admire. So I'll ask you, how many of you intentionally looked around your marriage today and pointed out even one thing that you admire and appreciate about your spouse? Even one thing, said out loud or wrote it down so that they could find it. Something that you admire about your spouse, or just are grateful that they did, maybe a little task. Why, thank you, honey, for picking up the dog poop out front, and for hanging up your coat, for filling up the water jug in the fridge. What happened, and I talked about this in segment 1 in detail, is that default mode in marriage often becomes most of us scanning the environment for what is not going well. That dang poop is still out there. Why can't he hang up his coat? Why am I always having to run to the store to pick up these little things? This water dispenser is constantly empty. I'm the only one who does anything around here. Right? Those narratives are in our control, and they change everything. A couple I interviewed a number of years ago shared something so powerful. They started to notice, and they had been married at that point, I think 50 some years. They were over 50 years married at that point, but they started to notice how this started to happen to them, that their marriage started to disintegrate into just, kind of neutral or even snarky comments. And so they created intentionally a new way of speaking to one another that would shift their mindsets. So every time they addressed the other, they would begin that sentence, that whatever, it didn't matter what it was, by saying, "Oh, beautiful husband of mine. Oh, beautiful wife of mine. Oh, beautiful husband of mine, would you mind picking up the dog poop? Oh, beautiful wife of mine, would you mind running and grabbing the spinach or the eggs from the store?" And they were married over 65 years, only separated by his death. And what they had described was that little shift in their language shifted their minds and shifted their marriage. Friends, we create the reality of our marriages. If you are constantly saying or thinking, "My spouse is driving me crazy," you have shaped that to be your reality, and everything you see will support that belief. What we practice becomes stronger. And the good news is the reverse is true as well. If you speak about and think about how good your relationship, you train your brain to see the good. What fires together, wires together. What we practice becomes stronger. In segment 1, I talked a little bit about an idea that a couple had about a daily marriage gratitude notebook. Just leave it in the kitchen. When you walk by, you jot down something you're thankful for about that person, something you admire or appreciate. And here's something else really fascinating. Marriage happiness, thriving marriages, they're contagious. And what I mean is, surrounding yourself with friends that also support your intentions of lifting each other in your marriage, your thinking, you'll get better at that practice. You want to surround yourself with friends and couples who don't complain and see the negative in their spouses, who don't have that negative mindset. Let me give you just one practical practice for changing your thinking. It's called Presupposing the Good. Father James Martin, an author or priest, states that in relationships, we should forever be seeking the good of the other. And it's interesting, right? When you think about it, when did we stop applying this to our marriages? A powerful mind shift happens when you choose to filter your interactions with your spouse through a presupposition of a good intention. Think about a presupposition of a good intention like a pair of glasses. When you put them on, what you see is filtered through the lens of compassion, of generosity. So even if an action itself was not good, what if we presuppose that our partner had good intentions? So let's take a common marriage complaint. The other person is late, always tardy, right? By the way, using the words always and never is not a great idea. But let's take tardiness. Honey, you're late. Okay, so when you presuppose the negative, the bad, your narrative in your head sounds something like, dang it, she's always late, so selfish, not thoughtful, I always have to do everything, right? Something like that, this negative narrative. That's just you talking to yourself. But when you don the glasses of presupposing the good, your narrative with yourself might sound something like, well, maybe she's late because she's working extra hard on that project. She works so hard for our family. I'm so grateful for the time that she puts in to support us. We even start to think good things must have a negative intention when we have this negative mindset. Your spouse brings home Saruji's chocolate and your favorite bottle of wine and ingredients to make dinner. And a negative mindset is, well, what is he covering up? What did he do wrong? Right? What we think becomes our reality, even before we have facts about that reality. But by presupposing good, you are not creating unnecessary conflict. You're always giving your partner the benefit of the doubt, or most often, right? Many people who are unhappy in their marriages are forever seeking the good of themselves rather than the other. A friend, therapist of mine, shared how she began using the phrase with her husband, well, you might be right about that, as her own little ritual, deciding that they don't need to argue about a lot of things that didn't matter. She and her kids used to have these arguments at dinner because her husband, I guess, had some interesting ways of thinking about things. But she decided to shift her mind, and it shifted, as she describes it, not only their dinner conversations, but it shifted their marriage. Because they're like, you might be right about that. And then they moved on. Also, you should know this research, that nearly 50% of the time, when we assume what our partner was thinking, we're wrong. Almost 50% of the time, when we assume what our partner was thinking, we're actually wrong. And there's an easy solution, right? When our minds are wondering what our partner is thinking or doing or why they said what they said, ask them, what did you mean by that? Why did you say that? Instead of assuming. Taking a stance of curiosity is a really powerful way to engage our spouses. Okay, so there's also one more thing we need to talk about. Well, maybe two. But let me tell you about this thing called negative sentiment override. Let's use the glasses analogy again. If you are feeling negative and thinking negative about your spouse or someone else, you have the glasses of negativity on. You literally will not see the positive. Your brain and thus your eyes are seeing the negative. We literally can't see what is positive because we are so focused on the negative. And that's called the negative sentiment override. The negativity in what we see actually overrides everything else. The 13th century poet Rumi reminds us, what you seek is seeking you. Whoa, that's good. What you seek is seeking you. You seek what's bad and wrong in your marriage, and yes, you will find it in your marriage. It starts to take up residence. What you seek in terms of positive moments, affirmations, adoration for your spouse, it will find your marriage. And here's the last thing I'm going to share in this segment, and it's a very common myth about love. Love isn't just an emotion, it's an action, it's a choice. Every day we need to wake up and decide to love our spouse. And this is probably the biggest thing, our cognitive decision to choose our spouse, to choose to love our spouse day after day. That is the most important piece of your marriage. And by doing so, you are changing not only the way you think, but the way you act. So many couples heading for divorce complain, well, the love is gone. Friends, you can and must wake up each day and make the decision to love your partner by word, by action, by little thing after little thing. Love is not the emotion we felt when we first were dating and going to the altar and on our honeymoons. That's called hormones. When the feeling of love fades, that's when the real love and real work begins. I quoted the 99-year-olds, this couple married 78 years in segment 1. As she said, I'll call her Veronica, marriage is not for sissies. And what I like to remind all couples is that if your marriage feels like hard work a lot of the time, you are probably doing it right. A lot of couples, especially in the middle years of marriage when satisfaction dips, they think they picked the wrong person. But newsflash, folks, your next relationship, if you leave your marriage, will most likely not be any better. We bring the same mindsets and behaviors into other relationships, into future relationships. There is a reason why second and third marriages have a higher likelihood of divorce. You get to choose the actions of loving your spouse right now, today, tomorrow, always. And I'm going to wrap up by saying this. If you haven't already, you and your partner should take the time to learn each other's love languages. Love languages are the 5 ways that people express love and feel love. Words of affirmation, acts of service, physical touch, gifts, and quality time. For instance, if you think that scraping the ice off your partner's car and filling the car with gas in the dead of winter is your greatest expression of love ever, because your love language is what's called acts of service, but her love language is physical touch, and what she needs you to do is just give her a 60-second hug when you come in the door after work, your actions might just need some fine-tuning. For instance, my love language is acts of service. If my husband scrapes the ice off my car and fills it with gas and my car's all clean, I know he loves me, right? But we have to hone in on what actions mean what in our marriage, to our spouse, to us. Otherwise, we're going to spin our wheels in marriage. So you can just Google machine the 5 love language, and you and your partner, your spouse can take the quiz to learn your primary and secondary love language. And that's your homework for today, maybe over dinner tomorrow. And even if your spouse and you have already done the quiz, do it again. Talk about 3 actions that you've appreciated, that are action of love based on their and your love languages. What we practice becomes stronger. So practice shifting your mindset, practice seeing your marriage and your partner as generous and full of potential, presuppose the good of their intentions, and you, day by day, will be creating the next beautiful chapter of your marriage.
Well, since we've only been married for 5 months, there's not a lot, but one big thing was she would always put her dishes in the sink instead of the dishwasher, and it just grinded my gears.
And the dishwasher broke.
I tried pointing it out so many times, and I feel like it improved a little bit, but it was just a lost cause for some parts of it, because obviously she gets up so early, she's in a rush, and she'll put it in the sink. And and not realizing it bothered me a lot, but
I'm getting there.
Yeah, slowly but surely.
Yeah, but I feel like we're still getting used to living together, and
Yeah.
we were both raised differently, so
Yes.
getting used to how each other was brought up and how they take care of things around the house. I feel like we haven't totally tried changing each other yet, besides maybe the dishes, but we're getting there.
Yeah, definitely.
I say no, because I just think I tried to marry a good person initially and somebody that I like. And then, the one thing I think about is like, I think there's times over the years, over 16 years, where I've wanted to change something about me, or John's wanted to change something about himself. And I think it's supporting him in that, or him supporting me in that. So I wouldn't say that I wanted to change something about you that I can think of. Because I think it's like, there's some things that are just fundamentally who he is. Do I need to understand who that is sometimes and like work into that? Sure. But, yeah, you might have wanted to change a bunch of stuff.
No, well, I think you did kind of mention it before. The sort of the cluttery thing was just one of those things that you've done a lot. You've actually.
He's changed me.
No, you've tried really hard, because that was hard for me, and I think in many ways I think tried to ignore that a lot more too, and so, but that's probably one of those ongoing things that I think
it's like a habit. It's not like fundamental.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just, but I don't say I actually tried to change that. It's just that it's been a little bit of a point of contention that we're both aware of.
Yes, that's fair.
and we've managed to figure out how to work with it and accept it. So.
We thought about this subject, and the answer is no. Bonnie's answer won't be no. I think she tried to. I'm impossible to change, but she gave it a try. However, in talking about it, we really kind of discovered that we grew up, each of us, in a totally different environment. Yet each of those environments, we learned from our own mentors, our parents, that that's not something you do, and nobody ever tried to change us. And I think we learned that lesson. And I don't think that. What's to change? So how do you view that one?
The only thing that I Dave was a smoker. And that's the only thing I ever tried to get him to not smoke. I tried everything. And eventually he just did it on his own. He came to the conclusion it wasn't a good thing and stopped himself. And I admired him for that, because I know that was a very difficult thing. He tried many, many times and failed.
I used to say that quitting smoking is easy. I've done it 100 times.
I think it's our parents.
Definitely.
We're kind of one of the first in our friends to get married, so I guess we don't really have that support there yet, but maybe
No.
our parents and some coworkers, but that's about it right now.
And in some way, we're kind of the support system for our friends, because they're all dating and
Getting engaged.
Yeah, they kind of look up to us in a way, which
Yeah.
we never really thought about, but we've had a couple conversations with them, and they're very, very happy that we're together and that we get to kind of show them our path, and hopefully that'll influence them, which I think it will,
Yeah.
as young as we are.
Yeah.
I think we have both of our parents have been married for a long time.
60 and almost 40 or 40 years
yeah.
for your
So
parents.
they are pretty good role models. We have a lot of couple friends that either some of them have kids that are older, some of them have kids that are the same age.
I also think we hang around people who are they value their marriage. They value we're not going to get together with them as couples if they should be by themselves, or we hang around people who value being married to their partner a lot.
Yeah.
and also who like are conscious about it, who work at it, who sometimes duke it out and figure it out. And
Yeah, and I think even beyond couple friends, we've got, you know, most of my guy friends are all pretty supportive of marriage and positive about their spouses, and you know that
Yeah.
really helps too. You know,
I would say that I'm going to go back to prayer because it's part of it. Life is a prayer. And we are really family oriented. And I came from a family in Milwaukee that was hugely family oriented. And lots of things we did together. And that just continues. And it's hard now during these COVID times to be, but we make up for that. It's been, I can't say fun, but it's been interesting to find ways to make up for that, because you don't change your values or anything, but you miss something like all of us do, and we've come up with some pretty unique ways. I guess they aren't unique because I see everybody on Zoom and so on. But to us it was unique because we never had to do that before, and it's been a kind of a life lesson for us.
I think for me too, prayer is a big part of my life. And when Dave was talking about friends, we now we FaceTime with some friends who were just, I would say, maybe more than acquaintance, but not real good friends.
Yeah, they live in Antigo, so
sometime during this COVID thing, the wife said to me, "Why don't we?" And I'm trying to think if it was after the election or if it was New Year's, and she said, "Why don't we have a glass of wine and FaceTime and celebrate?" So we started doing it every Saturday night at 7:00. We Zoom, FaceTime each other. And right now they're in Florida, and so this Saturday night they're going to FaceTime us from Florida. And for some reason we have just become really good friends on FaceTime.
That's
and
great.
They support us in how we feel, and we support them.
Yeah.
They're beautiful people. We really like them a lot.
It's a hard one.
It is, yeah.
It's hard to describe it. You know, it's a feeling that is undescribable. And I've had friends ask me this before, like, how'd you know? And it's just this feeling. I knew that I wanted to be with him forever, and he just makes me happy. I don't like going a day without seeing him or talking to him. It's just those little things that just make you happy, and it's hard to describe almost.
Yeah, I guess the feeling that comes to my mind is when I proposed to her, I was nervous out of belief that I was shaking. And in my mind, I feel like that is a sign that I'm in love with you. And just the feeling that you get whenever you say some important big announcement, or just, yeah, it's very hard to describe.
Yeah.
In my mind, yeah.
I remember, it reminds me of something, maybe it'll help you think of something, but when we were first married, and it was like within like a month of being married, and John's like, "Oh, I'm glad we're married." He's like, "I can take it easier," or something you said, and it was like I don't have to try so hard. It was his response, and I'm like, oh my God, what in the hell did I do? And don't you remember that? And I thought I would die, because I thought, oh my, like he doesn't love me. He's not going to put effort forth. And that's not what he meant. He meant like we can just be together, and we can just be committed to each other, and it's somehow, you know, we can rest in this easier. And I don't know how you even said it, but I remember taking it really like badly initially. And I think like love is that. It's like a choice every day. It's not like, you know, there's sometimes like, but I always do like you, even, you know, like it's deeper than like. It's like it's about all the mundane stuff. It's about putting the other person first even when you'd rather not, or love is little things. It's not always the big romance and
and it's
all
kind
that.
of just thinking about what the other person wants and trying to do that. Not necessarily all the time because you want to, but just because they will like that, and to try and make them happy, and that's a little bit of sometimes it's a choice, but
Yeah, it's a
most of the
choice.
time it's if it's something you practice, it comes fairly naturally.
My idea of love is knowing that the person I love has the courage to love me in return. That's what it means to me. You're that person, by the way.
Good. I guess I just keep going back to the respect thing, and that involves a lot, because that involves when Dave is wrong, he's willing to admit that he's wrong, and when I'm wrong, he loves me anyway, and he forgives me, and I think that whole forgiveness thing is really what love is, and being able to go on from that. I don't know how you can do it without that, because it has to be a mutual thing, and I think it is with Dave and I, or we wouldn't be here 63 years later.
You know,
'Cause we
I can
endured
affirm,
a lot in our marriage.
I can affirm that, talking about affirm, because I can remember, I have a very good memory, and 2 years ago, I was wrong, and I admit it. There's affirmation for you.
Right.